Hello and welcome back to the Nasty Metal Production channel here at YouTube, and welcome to another album of the week. This is episode number 101. And so for this week's pick goes to, well, it is the fourth studio album from Gillan, which was Ian Gillan's more solo hard rock / heavy metal band. This is Future Shock, which, again, depending on what month this was released, apparently on Wikipedia, sometimes apparently will state either April or March. Either way, it is already reaching its 40th anniversary, again, March of 1981, and since we're at least are in March, and I don't know, it's not really specific on what month this album was released on, but either way, I'm spotlighting it, again, either within or ahead of its anniversary, so 40th anniversary. So here we go. Again, this is our fourth studio album following 1980's Glory Road, which I actually did spotlight on this channel already some years ago, actually, when I first started this album of the week series. So I did. So again, this is following that album. So again, they always do tour. Again, this lineup being, well, it is still pretty much the classic lineup of Deep Purple singer Ian Gillan, the late Bernie Torme, Colin Towns on keyboards, John McCoy on bass, and Mick Underwood on drums. So it's just a classic lineup. And yes, it should definitely, again, let you know it is their fourth album, because many people probably would think that might be wrong. But it is their fourth album because of the Japanese album it sometimes gets referred to as, which did have at least the Gillan name and did feature some of the members on here that at least were on that album at least. Again, it was the Japanese album, which, again, it was just self-titled, but it got named that because it was only released in Japan in 1978. And then Mr. Universe was pretty much, in many ways, really the second album. Still, it's just facts there. So, Future Shock, again, following Glory Road. So, at least, again, whenever they got done touring or so, doing at least what they felt was enough shows to do, or at least filling out those booked shows, they of course go back to Kingsway Recorders in London, UK, which was in many ways, I think it was somewhat owned by John McCoy. It was at least somewhat owned by John McCoy. So they go back to there. And so from December 1980 to January 1981, they were recording Future Shock, and they recorded a bunch of songs, just like with the previous album and so on. They pretty much were a recording machine, basically. They just recorded a ton of songs. Some of the songs, not all the songs that they recorded made it onto the record, but at least some of them made it on to like either B-sides or were special little singles like MAD, which was Maturely Assured Destruction, with of course the Maelstrom being the B-side. So there was a lot of songs that they recorded for it, even finally recording a version of Lucille for the at least during the sessions, which yeah, apparently I think it was only a song that I think Ian Gillan was singing with for Deep Purple in some places, because it was a cover. It was an old blues track. So there you go. But Future Shock, finally, after recording it, it gets released in sometime either March or April through Virgin Records in 1981. With, of course, the band again back just producing the album, which is why it just has that rough, raw, just straight in the studio sound. But of course, they always will say that it never really, their studio albums never really quite captured how they really sounded live. But still, again, I love the sort of rawness of some of their albums to begin with, especially this one. So let's definitely get into Future Shock. So for this album, we got about at least 10 songs here, and it all clocks in at 43 minutes and 24 seconds. So these 10 songs are Future Shock, Night Ride out of Phoenix, The Ballad of, The Lusitania Express, No Laughing in Heaven, Sacre Bleu, I hope Sacre Bleu. I hope I pronounced that correct. New Orleans, which is again a cover track, Gary U.S. Bond's cover. Bite the Bullet, If I Sing Softly, Don't Want the Truth, and then finally For Your Dreams. So there's your 10 songs, and where do we really begin? I mean, I definitely do consider Glory Road and Mr. Universe as being two of my favorite albums, along with Double Trouble and Magic. I mean, any of the albums that this band, at least Gillan's band here, put out during this the short span from like 1978 to at least 1982. To me, I just can't really find anything bad about any of these albums, but again, they're all fun to listen to. But I think Future Shock just has a little bit of, the really is. But this was, of course, can be seen as like an end of an era, actually, because, and I'll definitely will at least elaborate on that. But still, the one thing that what I think's really what they're able to do with this album is really combine the sort of unique qualities that at least you heard on those first three Gillan albums, being the Japanese album, which I will always will include because it has to be included, and then Mr. Universe and Glory Road. Those again, this that really almost abstract, very almost, I wouldn't say avant-garde, but it just is such a unique atmosphere that just again, it's all Gillan. It may have been inspired from his work with Deep Purple, but it just was even taken to even more further lengths here. It really, he really, Gillan was just able to just really dive into a more unique territory. Again, bringing in the almost more fusiony feel, I guess, of the Ian Gillan band stuff, which was more jazzy rock fusion material. Very progressive though, and that's what you get. Again, it adds those really just unique progressive atmospheric elements, but combined with the sort of really hard-edged heavy rock that a lot of the new wave or British heavy metal bands were doing at the time, and you really get that. This album is the best mixture of all of that. It just combining the good stuff that made, for me, again, like the Japanese album, Mr. Universe, and then Glory Road, and just really amping it all up. This is, to me, again, one of the crowning achievements of this lineup here. Just do great stuff. I'm beginning with the title track, which is just a great rocker. Not Right Out of Phoenix. No Laughing in Heaven is basically, again, it's straight up Ian Gillan's humor, and either at times maybe it could be social commentary, all that. The guy is definitely, again, if you listen to the more, at least the lyrics he ended up adding on like the more recent Deep Purple album, Whoosh, I think in some ways, when listening to a track like No Laughing in Heaven, it falls in the line of some of those. He really knows how to really come up with a really sort of humorous, tongue-in-cheek track, but still somehow, again, retain even at times a bit of social commentary. And I think No Laughing in Heaven is one of those achievements. Some have said this is probably one of the earliest, rapping rhyme sort of word stuff, for at least song based, whatever. That some have said that just the way he's just easily to at least, in terms of just coming up with this sort of rhymes or whatever. And I don't know if I would ever would go as far as consider it, but I can see where some people try to, but I almost feel like it's a stretch saying this might be one of the earliest rap rock songs or whatnot. I don't know why some people trying to, I guess it just the way everything's phrased, it could be why some people get that, just that overall, I guess, feel, whatnot. They get that impression. But I think it might be a little stretch. It's just fucking catchy, and it's goddamn great. I like No Laughing in Heaven. And then, of course, other songs like I Sing Softly, which, again, was just a very good ballad. Again, Ian Gillan could come up with a great fucking ballad. He was great at doing so that's a great track. And again, For Your Dreams, Don't Want the Truth. So you still get plenty of great rockers on here. And For Your Dreams is, again, really kind of really pushing sort of real, almost progressive, atmospheric, almost avant-garde elements in some cases. But again, just accompanied by the sort of really heavy, very slow rock of stuff there. Again, it still has a vicious tone. Again, you really can draw some comparisons to even like, it's in some cases Uriah Heep. Because again, it just has a real dark element to it that I just really like. But the thing about this album, like some of the previous albums and the ones after this, you still get a lot of those. They really do add in some of those again, just to come up with the sort of new wave or British heavy metal traits. You get those real fast, almost punky like metal tracks that are at times very early speed metal. And this album has its fair share that at times really wouldn't be out of place off like either a Motorhead or Tank album. It just has that rough, raw edge to them. Again, with songs like the Ballad of the Lusitania Express, Sacre Bleu, and then Bite the Bullet. These are just fast rippers. So just good. Again, they rip. Again, they got that punk edge to them. Again, that raw, new wave or British heavy metal sound. And then, of course, there's always the cover, and that's the Gary U.S. Bonds track, New Orleans, which is a great, I do somewhat dig it as well. Again, Ian Gillan can pull off a good cover. He always has a thing for pulling off more old school blues numbers or whatnot. He always is able to pull that off. So, again, with like Deep Purple and then Gillan here. So, just great. Again, I just really can't pick anything bad about this album. Again, I've always enjoyed this one. The production, I think, might be the most rawest here, but there's just something that hits me better. It just hits me better in terms of that I like the raw edge to it. I like that it doesn't sound completely pristine and clean. It just, again, it really, in some cases, it may not really capture how they sounded live, but it sure captures a band just fucking hammering it out in the studio. It still has that rehearsal feel to it. It definitely does sound like a band that's obviously trying to work as hard as possible. Again, blue collar, working class material, and that's what you that sort of work ethic. You get that here, and that's what again, one of the other things I just appreciate. And I think you really all of some of that, at least those qualities, really definitely are lifted on this album. You really can hear that on this one. So again, those are one of the many reasons why I like this album. Everything about Ian Gillan, all of that, he just sounds great to me. Personally, as much as I do like some of what David Coverdale was doing with Whitesnake at this period, and also whatever Richie Blackmore was doing was fine too, but I just think that Ian Gillan was, I think, the one that really, you really can tell that he embodied the spirit of that Mach 2 era of Deep Purple, because of, it may not, I mean, guys like Colin Towns and Mick Underwood may not be, you know, some of the great musicians in Deep Purple. Again, Colin Towns may not be John Lord. Mick Underwood may not be Ian Pace. Hell, John McCoy may not at times be Roger Glover. But they've got personality, and they add their personality to what Ian Gillan is providing on this album and what Bernie Tormé is providing to this album. And Bernie Tormé, again, he may not be Richie Blackmore, but he still is a very flashy and really just a great eclectic fucking guitar player. He's just able to really do, he's a shredder. Again, I wouldn't say he's like close to like Eddie Van Halen levels of shred, but he just has style. And it just, all of those personalities of these members, it all is just blended well with this album. And I think this is definitely some of the crowning achievements in their discography. Just a solid album. So that's, again, I can talk for as long as I want about Future Shock, but I have to stop somewhere. So again, it's a classic album. So after this album, they obviously do their tours, but the thing is, during this album, which is why I'll now elaborate on why this is kind of an end of an era, because this would be the final album for Bernie Tormé and Gillan. Because during the tour, at least of this album, and I've got the booklet here because I've got the Ian Gillan box set. Let me try and pull up the page I was on, because because I want to read some of this part because it really comes into play with this one. Here we go. I think this is right here. So, the thing is, during this album, there was a lot of butting heads, which was always there. Again, what Bernie Terme, at least what he was able to elaborate during this time when he was still alive, what he was trying to elaborate during this time in this book is that because of how they were recording pretty much an album within 7 or 8 months, they always were or at least were inside Kingsway Recorders, recording a lot of material. It actually added a little bit of time strains or stress, or at least on a lot of the band members, especially Bernard Torme. He really was starting to get to the point where it seemed like he was getting burned out from at least of being the band, because it was this constant recording, touring. It was almost, there was barely any time to almost breathe. And the thing is, they barely were making a whole lot of money as well. And of course, that plays into whenever I get into the Magic album, which then lead into Ian Gillan, Black Sabbath. Still, because of that, it was starting to put a bit of a toll on Bernie, and it seemed like he was about ready. So I'll try and read some the best I can from this one. So here's basically the quote from Bernard Terme on what he's reflecting on the tour or after Future Shock. So here's what he at least says here in the booklet for the box set that I've got. So we were doing an album basically every 7 or 8 months, non-stop touring, plus singles and B-sides, plus in Collins and my case, a solo album and singles. It was pretty crazy, so full on, I really don't remember many details. Let me try and get down to where it is. So here we go. When it charted in June of 1981, Top of the Pops beckoned, and Virgin offered to fly the band back from Germany for the appearance. When Ian agreed, the rest of the band had to follow, disgruntled at the waste of a rare day off. Amongst other conditions, Bernie refused and didn't show at the airport. Despite subsequent reports of Bernie's sacking, he had in fact already left the band. So again, and here's now finally some more quotes from Bernie. So he says here, "Do I regret it? Not at all in terms of leaving the band. Tempers were running high anyway, but I do regret how I did it. I should have, of course, have done Top of the Pops and left at the end of the tour. I really regret that." And then here, of course, Mick Underwood adds in from here, "I've always been of the opinion that it should never have been allowed to happen." So that's their reflecting on how, because again, right during that, Bernie obviously, a lot of the band members wanted at least a break from at least the band, because again, these guys were a touring and recording machine, but that also comes with at least a little bit of a setback, because of a lot of people want to be able to have time to breathe, time to relax at home and so on and recuperate. But when you're just all of a sudden just starting to hammering it in and just full force and go into it without any sort of breathing time, again, I can get that. I feel that. I know how some people can feel that, especially when you're just, again, when you want to have time to at least spend. But again, it's unfortunate. But still, you kind of have to also see from their perspective how difficult it was for them to at least be under these sort of pressures and be under these sort of circumstances. So again, and another one, they barely were making any money. They barely were. So just keep that in mind when you're reading into some of these stuff. Remember, Ian Gillan and at least the rest of the band weren't really making any money. They barely were. So you can understand the frustration in the members, especially Bernie Terme. So they wanted at least, so Bernie Terme got out of it early, but again, he seems to really reflect that he shouldn't have done it the way that he did when he left. It shouldn't have been after the tour instead of during the tour. But that's where then where this sort of information come out, because of while Bernie left, they obviously had to look for at least another guitar player to at least to fill in Bernie Terme's spot on the Top of the Pops television spot. So at the at least at the place. Let me try and look at here. So here we go. Again, let me read this. So the sudden departure meant that the TV appearance had to be done at a 4-piece. Bassist McCoy wielding a twin neck guitar bass, Bernie's replacement. Of course, here finally White Spirit's Yannick Gers, who would then be future Iron Maiden's future guitar player. Was already familiar with much of the material, having toured with Gillan, sharing the same agent. Yannick was already in the Top of the Pops dressing room, learning the material while the band were on stage, ready to fly out to Germany the following day to complete the tour. So they were able to find a replacement. Again, Yannick Gers, and that's when it finally will then lead into Double Trouble, which would then be released around the same year of 1981. So that means whenever during its month of whenever its 40th anniversary, it will be at least spotlighted. And that shouldn't be very long because, again, this year it will reach its 40th anniversary. So there you go. There is Future Shock from Gillan, which is already reached. In many ways, it's reaching its 40th anniversary. So if you have any sort of memories or any reflections on this album, again, what were just your whole entire thoughts of this album? Do you even share the same thoughts that you once did when you first heard it, or are the thoughts the same? Again, all of these you can leave in the comment section below. But if you haven't heard this album, I mean, this is a good album. I mean, if you liked Ian Gillan's vocals, if you like his stuff with Deep Purple, and you like his stuff just in general, I can't see anyone who is a fan of at least the Ian Gillan era or the Mach 2 era of Deep Purple and not like this. Especially even, let's say, even Born Again for Black Sabbath. I can't see anyone who's a fan of those albums not be a fan of anything he did with the Gillan band. The band Gillan. So I can't see you not liking Future Shock. So at that, I hope all of you enjoyed. Well, next week, we'll definitely have another album of the week. And we'll definitely be, let me get my phone here so I can look at my monthly book date for next week. So next week's album of the week will be, oh wow. I can't believe this is going to be next week's album of the week. This will be for March 15th, which will be a Monday. It is none other than the classic third album from the classic German metal band. And I've always just reviewed their most recent album on this channel. It is Breaker from Accept. That will be next week's album of the week pick. And I think some of those would love to hear my thoughts on that album, because that is just one of my favorite albums from Accept. So there you go. That is going to be next week. So with that, I hope all of you enjoyed this week's album of the week. So with that, take care and have a nice week.